Imagine working hard your entire life, saving carefully, planning for your future, only to wake up one day and realize that 30 to 40% of your wealth is gone. Not stolen, not invested badly, not lost in a stock crash. Instead, it vanished quietly, silently through a mechanism so deeply woven into the world economy that most people don't even notice it happening. The silent thief is inflation, a force governments use intentionally or not to reduce the real value of your money, without ever touching your bank account. Today, we will uncover how inflation became the world's most powerful hidden tax, how it reshapes societies, and how it quietly transfers wealth from ordinary people to governments, elites, and powerful institutions. To understand inflation's role as a wealth eraser, we must go back in time. Inflation has existed for thousands of years, long before central banks, modern currencies, or global markets. From ancient kings who clipped coins to medieval rulers who diluted silver, inflation was always a tool of power, a way to take wealth without asking, without voting, and without the public realizing what was happening. As the world transitioned into modern nation-states and paper currencies, inflation evolved. It became more sophisticated, more controlled, and more hidden. And in the 20th century, when the gold standard collapsed, governments gained unprecedented freedom to print money, expand credit, and manipulate economic cycles. This power reshaped the global financial system, and it set the stage for the inflation trap we live in today. In ancient Rome, the government used a simple trick, shaving tiny pieces of silver off coins before minting them. Again, citizens received coins that looked identical but held lower metal value. Over decades, Rome's currency quietly collapsed. People worked the same jobs, bought the same goods, but everything slowly became more expensive. Bread doubled, then tripled, then exploded in price. Soldiers demanded more pay. The empire weakened. Inflation wasn't just an economic failure, it helped bring down a civilization. This pattern repeated across empires. Chinese dynasties printed too many paper notes. Medieval kings mixed cheap metals with gold. Each time, inflation acted as a hidden mechanism to fund wars, build palaces, or cover debts. Ordinary people paid the price. This was the first version of the inflation trap, leaders quietly reducing the value of money to solve political problems. The modern version of inflation began when money stopped being tied to gold. In 1971, the United States abandoned the gold standard, and soon the entire world followed. No longer limited by gold reserves, governments could print money whenever needed. They could stimulate economies, pay debts, smooth over financial crises, and they did it often. Inflation became a permanent feature, not an accident. If governments needed money, they could create it. If economies slowed, central banks injected liquidity. If debt became overwhelming, inflation quietly reduced its real burden. This is where inflation turned into a powerful tool, not for stealing money outright, but for slowly diluting its value. People didn't feel it immediately. A little inflation to 3%, for percent felt harmless, but over decades, it acted like erosion, slowly wearing away savings, salaries, and purchasing power without causing panic. What a thief could never steal overnight, inflation could take over 20 years. As global economies expanded, so did government debt. Countries needed more money to fund healthcare, wars, pensions, education, and infrastructure. Instead of raising taxes, which causes public outrage, governments found a quieter solution: inflation. When prices rise, your money buys less, but debts owed by governments also shrink in real value. It is the perfect hidden tax. After 2008, central banks created trillions in quantitative easing, money printed digitally to stabilize markets. This prevented collapse, but also set off long-term inflation pressures. The pandemic added another wave. Global governments injected historic levels of stimulus money into the economy. Supply chains broke, prices soared. Suddenly, inflation was no longer invisible. It was everywhere: food, rent, fuel, healthcare. Yet governments rarely admitted responsibility. They blamed supply issues, global shocks, temporary disruptions. Meanwhile, every household silently lost wealth. A family with $10,000 in savings effectively lost $3,000 in real purchasing power in just a few years. Workers earning the same salary became poorer. Retirees saw their fixed incomes weaken. Inflation proved once again to be the most efficient tool for transferring wealth from the public to the system. What makes inflation especially dangerous is its invisibility. If someone steals from your wallet, you feel violated. But if your money loses value slowly over years, you don't notice. Prices don't jump all at once, they climb gradually, like water rising in a bathtub. A few cents more for milk, a few dollars more for rent, a small shock at the gas pump, and people adjust again and again. Economists call this inflation tolerance. Governments rely on it. If inflation is slow enough, the public accepts it without revolt. But silently, their savings shrink, their futures shrink, their dreams shrink. Consumers are taught to blame businesses, landlords, or markets, not the monetary policies that quietly reduce the value of every currency on earth. Inflation isn't just economic, it's psychological manipulation. When inflation rises, who loses and who gains? The losers are ordinary people. Salaries lag behind rising prices, savings lose purchasing power. Retirees suffer. The poor get crushed, and who benefits? Governments, big borrowers, major corporations, and financial institutions. Debt becomes cheaper in real terms. Assets like real estate, gold, and stocks inflate with the tide of printed money. Those who own assets grow richer. Those who rely on cash grow poorer. Inflation becomes a system of wealth redistribution from workers to the elite, not through laws, not through votes, but through silent decay. The next stage of the inflation trap could be even more powerful. Central Bank Digital Currencies, CBDCs. With fully digital money, governments could control spending, freeze accounts, limit withdrawals, or impose programmed inflation directly. No cash, no escape, no protection. Imagine inflation not as a side effect, but as a built-in feature. Money that expires, money that devalues faster, money controlled at its source. This is the future many governments are already preparing for. Inflation has always been the quietest, most effective way for governments to take wealth without resistance. From ancient Rome to today's digital economy, it remains a hidden tax paid by every citizen, every saver, every worker. But understanding the inflation trap gives you power. It reveals why prices rise, why savings weaken, and why governments depend on inflation to survive. The question is not whether inflation will continue, it will. The real question is, how will you protect yourself before the next wave quietly steals another 30 to 40% of your wealth? This documentary isn't just a warning, it's a wake-up call.